Okay, here we go. We are on. Yes, we are rolling. I'm going to check all the audio. Good morning, everybody. Depending on where you are. Oh, it's still morning everywhere. It's going to be another hot one. Yep, no question. But we are on. I want to just double check. We do have some news on this day 48. Let me check all the audio. Good morning, Denise. Yes, there's Nina. I want to just double check. I think we are good to go. And I want to just check. Should be able to check the audio on X. Not sure why I'm not able to check the audio on X. We should be good to go. I want to check. Yes, good morning. On this day 48. With some updates. Yep. Okay, there we go. I'm seeing that we are. Boy, not a good day to travel. You've seen the TSA lines. Not a good day to be traveling in any way. So I want to just double check. We have a good guest coming up that's going to join us momentarily. There's Jody and Bob. Good morning. Michigan could take it all.
They could, but
Yep.
I don't think they will.
Well,
Too many upsets along the way.
think so? All right. I am.
On
Yep.
purpose?
No. Only clean shirt. Laundry's on Saturdays.
Somebody was here yesterday. You weren't here.
I was here, yeah. And then there was some activity with people in the afternoon. So, but I just assume come now before the heat of the day starts. Yeah. Yesterday was hot.
And today's going to be a
Today's going to a little bit hotter, right? Yeah. How about everyone says, but Phoenix is going to be much hotter. Do you see those TSA lines?
No.
No?
I'm not surprised.
TSA lines are brutal right now.
We had friends who were going through Hobby when they had the really big ones a couple of days ago.
Oh,
You know, where they couldn't get through. They had to find alternate accommodations, alternate
wow.
hotels were available. They had to sleep at the airport.
So today it is going to reach over to 101.
Oh, well, that's normal here.
Well, not in March though. Yeah. Let me just check Phoenix, because everyone says Phoenix this weekend, they're opening their water parks. They normally wait till summertime. Phoenix today, it'll be at 105.
You're not used to this. People out here are used to
You know, I don't mind the heat. You guys walk around a lot, right? I see you walking each day.
Yeah.
So let me show you who has better eyesight. All right. So you can see yesterday that didn't affect me. Can you?
18,000 steps in.
Yes. So you could see, right? That didn't affect me.
No.
All right.
Well, it's the humidity out here, man. And that'll start. If you're here during monsoon, you'll feel the real difference.
Okay. I haven't felt a lot of humidity. Seems just to be it does. Okay. But you two are wise to get out early and walk like this.
If we were like the rest of our neighborhood, we would have been out 2 hours ago.
Oh, all right. Too funny. All right. Nice chatting with you. Go Michigan. Some of the local neighbors. All right. We start off. I want to just double check. I believe the audio is totally fine. I'm not sure why. Look at this. Thank you to True BU. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Now, I also, yeah, everything, I believe, I think you guys would let me know if there's a problem with audio. I normally like to then just like what I call go around the horn. Just, here we go. Okay. It wasn't coming up before. I think the X video sound. Yeah, the X sound is totally fine. Now, folks, I also want to, we do have some news. We do have some updates. We have a good guest that's going to join us coming up, Guy Adams with the Daily Mail. But I'm going to thank everyone. Right now, we are live on YouTube. Make sure you follow our page on YouTube. We're also live on Facebook, and we are live on X. Listen, I'm here, and one of the reasons that I'm here, I don't like to overreact, but I do get, hi there, Cindy. I do hear from some people who then they ask me like, is this true or is that true or different um oh, wait a minute. I can let me show the I like when we have let me put it right there. There we go. Then the chat's on the screen. You know, someone was asking me or posted to me today saying, I think it's terrible. The neighbors threw out all those signs and the neighbors threw out um, all the cards and letters left for Nancy. And again, for those, there's again the property in the front door. So I don't react to it, but this was this morning. Someone sent me a note. This is terrible, and they threw out all those handmade signs, and they threw out all the cards and letters. Well, just and I think this is important. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to get into who puts that stuff out, but it's misinformation. Here, you can see right here. Here's all the signs. They weren't thrown out. They're put in one spot. All those gaudy signs that Pinky made. Um, but this business and all the signs were thrown. Well, the first thing you see is it's time to let the family bring Nancy home. And as I explained, what the neighbors did do was the flowers that you see out there right now are artificial flowers. The cards and letters, I'm not going to open it, but they were put in the mailbox for the family. The only thing, and I want to thank Mark the Shark. He continues to put yellow ribbons for people to want to. There are some real flowers that are here. Some people came by, but for the most part, they had a rodent problem, and they had whatever those things are, javelinas, eating it, and it was causing a problem. And so they got together, and so some people, it's a little more condensed. But if I lived here, which some people think I do live here, I wouldn't want live flowers are now dead flowers. So then rodents are coming and it's causing a rodent problem here. So, but just so we're clear, all cards and letters were put in that mailbox for the family. They are no longer receiving mail, but the signs were not thrown out. So again, I'm not going to go on and on about it, but sometimes people reach out to me. That's terrible. All those signs were they weren't thrown out. They're right there. No, I want to do. I do want to. Excuse me. Go through some of the updates of the day. I want to thank everyone for all their. This is actually a really good spot because we're right here in front of the home. It is quiet out here thus far, although it can change as the day goes along. We'll see if there's any activity with family or anything like that. But I will share with you on this day 48 that we remain on the ground. It was a good article that I was featured in. It's a good segment in article on CNN where I even say I thought I'd be out here for a week. I thought I'd fly out. I even told CNN I was like, all right. When my son dropped me off at the airport, I said, listen, I'll probably be back next weekend, but if they're getting a ransom note, then there's probably going to be a manhunt, and then they're on the hunt, and I want to be there. They find her, they catch the kidnappers, and the whole thing. Clearly, that has not worked out as we are on this day 48. Um, and as far as people say, how long have you been there? I'll say this: when I got here, it was not Lent, and Lent is 40 days. So no, I arrived the first week, and now I'm just counting into days. It is day 48. By the way, I want to be very clear. I am aware that it is it's a terrible situation at the airports with these TSA lines. I don't I mean I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but none of that looks good. Um, None of that looks good with. I know I don't know what's going on with the back and forth, to be honest with you, because it is kind of it is kind of nice that I just kind of when you're only on like one story, which for the most part, I mean, I follow a lot of the news, but when you're on like one story, you do tend to. I mean, I'm aware of what's going on in Iran. I'm aware with certain things, but whatever is going on, they have to straighten that out. I want to thank who do I see? Sabrina, thank you, new member with our YouTube channel. boy, the YouTube fellowship followings, excuse me, yeah, the fellowship has really picked up. So now, and just to we're going to go through some of the updates. And again, someone who has been, I think, here pretty consistently. His name is Guy Adams. He is a reporter for the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail. I am a big fan of theirs. They, boy, they're always out in front. They break so much news, and he has been in and out. But I did see him here the other day. He has a new story coming out, and we're going to talk with Guy Adams of the Daily Mail, I think about at the top of the hour. Top of the hour also shifts a little bit because then we're also something where I'm different is we will be live on the radio for the next hour. And then the flow of that is a little bit different. And by the way, we have great sponsors and so forth. If you're watching on Facebook, you can, and we have so many new Facebook people. On Facebook, you can send stars. On YouTube, you can send super sticker, super chat. I am trying to figure out and weigh um, how much longer I'm going to be on this tour, because I do want to see my family at Easter. And when I do talk to my family, by the way, I don't want to say I get homesick, but this has been a grind. This has been a grind for many of the new people. 4 years ago, I went to the war started, and I actually went to Poland and Ukraine. And I mean, that I'm not doing it again. It was way too dangerous. I'm there for a month. So, and then you see some people, you can hear a horn. It's just some people that want to slow down. So they drive very slowly. They should just pull over. And then I understand some of the neighbors around here want to get by. But people are coming out and they want to leave flowers and show support for the Guthrie family. And for those that are thinking of doing that, just a couple of reminders. Number one, this street is still no parking, and you have some pretty aggressive neighbors. If you are thinking of coming, and I notice on the weekend, many people do come out and driving somewhat far distances. People come in from Nevada, people come in from other parts of Arizona, people come in from New Mexico. I think those people are going to turn around. The ideal situation would bring there's beautiful artificial flowers that you can purchase either locally or someone else. Don't feel like you don't want to chintz out and just bring fake flowers. Those flowers you're looking at right now, those are artificial flowers. They're beautiful. They add that nice yellow, display of support in front for Nancy Guthrie and the Guthrie family. So don't think that somehow you're a chintz or a chiseler if you bring artificial flowers. That's the smarter thing to do instead of in this, especially in this heat. The live flowers are not going to last that long. So we do have some updates, and again, you can tell. It is a little bit odd because when I first arrived here, and I was telling CNN that their local station right here in Tucson would be at the corner. Next to them were Fox and Friends. Next to them were News Nation. At one point, NBC, or even whatever it is now, is it still MSNBC or is it something like something now? I don't even know. But anyhow, they used to be there. And then you had CNN was right here on the corner. It was a big deal when and then it'd go down the line. You can tell, and I'm aware that because of what's going on. I mean, right now, every news station is flocking to the airport to cover the TSA lines. I saw that in Atlanta. Some people got there at 3 in the morning and they still missed their 6 a.m. flight. That's a problem. And I recognize that the war in Iran and so forth carries a lot of news. However, there's still tremendous interest in this story. And I, as someone that's been on the ground and covering it and talking, we've had some great interviews with both my friend Jamie and also Morgan Wright and a few others. So there seems to be, I'm noticing a pattern of experts. and the length of time and several things that the sheriff, and I'm going to walk through them a little bit, but I mentioned because people always say, is there anything new? And what's the news? And the New York Post has a story, and the New York Post photographer was here for a long time. Ooh, oh man, here we go. Is that it? Yes. Whoa. Okay. Let me see who wrote this article. This is interesting. So this is new. 5 people retired. Is this the same as the New York Post story? Because now the Daily Mail has it. You know what's also interesting is that says, all right, so they don't have mosquitoes here, but there's gnats. And those flowers with the water were attracting a lot of insects. And on top of that, I'll tell you that the most dangerous thing out here are these cactus. It's like it's not looking. Um, it's like you feel like they're attacking you, but it's just and they're low to the ground and you back into them. All right, I'm going to go. The New York Post was the first one that I saw that had this. Nancy Guthrie abducted likely as many 4 accomplices. Let me see who it is. So this is the New York Post has the Daily Mail. What's the original source? A retired, uh, premeditated involving 2 to 4 accomplices. Oh, according to a report, Kurt Dobb, who worked with the agency now leading the search, told Parade, I guess is that Parade magazine, that a high-profile abduction like Guthrie's would need more people than just the masked armed man caught on the doorbell camera the night she vanished. I believe there are anywhere between 2 to 4 accomplices, he said, when asked if he thinks the suspect on camera acted alone. Now, let me preface this. He's retired. He is speculating. He is speculating about that. That's very important. He says the logistics of something of this magnitude too much for one person to handle. In my professional opinion, based on the facts I know them right now, it's more than likely the home was canvassed prior, either by the kidnapper himself or accomplice. Whether or not they knew a camera was there was a culmination of their reconnaissance. Dobb agreed with other law enforcement experts Guthrie's disappearance was not a result of a botched robbery, but a targeted kidnapping, again referencing the front door footage. Burglars don't go to burglarize a house with a full backpack. This was a kidnapping. So that is Guthrie, the blah, blah, blah. Police have not identified any suspects. So Parade magazine was the source of this. And then the New York Post and the Daily Mail are also, running it and running credit with it. Now, there's a couple of things about that. I want to just pull up. Okay. So Parade magazine, Nancy Guthrie update, retired homicide detective says 2 to 4 accomplices may have been involved. Again, as much as I'm not doubting this individual, but people do need to remember that is just speculation. And one of the things that I like about we've spoken to both Morgan Wright and Jamie Coffendever is they point out the fact that the police have the facts. The police are not letting on to exactly what the clues are. But then you go back to Sheriff Nanos, who told the Today Show. And for those of you that follow the program, I jumped on that right away. He said that we believe we know what the motive was, which is so important. We believe we know what motive was, and we believe it's the same motive that it was and the same theory that we've had since day one. So now, just this week, and I want to thank, we spoke with Jen Coffendaffer, retired FBI. I'll have to go through all of the different guests we had. Um, we also, Jen Coffendaffer was great. Doug McGregor was terrific. And, and Jamie, who I had on yesterday, and we're going to, I'm actually, he was also on with me quite some time on TikTok Live yesterday. Jamie Copenhaver, they seem to, and did I mention, I think I mentioned Morgan Wright. By the way, I know that the Morgan Wright video interview is very long. I have not had any time to edit that. I'm gonna edit that probably this weekend and post it. You can watch it in its entirety. But again, I recognize people have these different theories. These are people that are professionals. These are people that this is what they do. This is their profession. That's what their experience is. And they believe what seems to be emerging to me are, and it is frightening, by the way. And let me also just say a quick hello on this. Where are we? Day 48. So um, the gentleman that came by, people think that I'm wearing Arizona colors because the college team, the Arizona State, they're ranked number 2 in the country behind Duke. They're expected to maybe even win the national championship. So all over today, they are like the professional team here in Providence. The PC Friars, Providence College Friars men's basketball. That's like the professional team. I don't hear any talk about the Phoenix Suns in this area. If you go to certain parts of the country, in Alabama, they don't have a professional football team. That's Alabama is their pro team. In Boston, they really don't have a college scene, so the Celtics are the pro team. But in this area, the Sun Devils, they are 100%. Everything revolves around that, and especially they've won the national championship. They're expected to win it again, and so it's just total happenstance that I happen to wear this type of shirt. But something that I wanted to mention, and I'm going to ask Guy from the Daily Mail about this. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, the Daily Mail, I mean, they're always, and I'm not just saying that, but they always have things first. They break so much news. They're very, very aggressive. And many times when a story breaks, the Daily Mail, they have it ahead of, like, there's certain news outlets that seemingly are just better than others at getting news out first. TMZ can be like that. The New York Post can be like that. But the Daily Mail also fits into that category. But there's two likely scenarios that I'm hearing in talking to all these former law enforcement guests this week, that there's a pattern and a theme that they seem to be zeroing in on. And that is, and it is, make no mistake about it is frightening, but it is that this was a targeted kidnapping. And if you heard my interview with Morgan Wright, and Jamie kind of said the same thing, there's a belief that it's possible that this was a targeted kidnapping that went wrong, meaning that for some reason, whoever abducted Nancy Guthrie, their intention was to kidnap her. And then, sadly, tragically, but that something went wrong. And specifically, when you're talking about an 84-year-old woman and someone who, although mentally sharp, um, needed daily medication. And I say this with great sensitivity, but they seem to believe a growing narrative that they initially came here with the intention of kidnapping her, and then it just it just went wrong. So a targeted kidnapping. I think Morgan Wright says it best when he said that he believes this truly has become. And again, I listen, in the beginning, I felt like everybody else, let's hope she comes back and return her safely and let her be found. And I mean, I felt and thought all those things. But as time now has gone on, and you want to kind of we want to deal in reality when we can. but there just seems to be a growing feeling that she is no longer with us. And the fact that, Savannah even hints at that. But I think when Morgan Wright says that he thinks this is a potential, it's a homicide investigation without a body. And I think it's very interesting. He was telling us, if you heard the interview, and again, it is posted here on YouTube, it is on Facebook. I'm going to re-edit it because we had him, but we had some other guests. But he was just he believes that that's how they should be investigating this. Good morning to Jane Rice, as more of that, as opposed to a missing person. So now I've also mentioned, as a matter of fact, that when I was on Court TV, I'll have to go back and check the tape. But when I was on Court TV, there was a retired New York City detective who he was saying that he thinks right from the beginning this should not have been described as a missing person. There was a missing person yesterday in this area, and she was found. And so my point is, when they arrived here, and they're now, the sheriff has now said that he had a working theory from day one based on what they found inside with the crime scene. So there seems to be, I thought this New York City detective, when we were on Court TV, I thought he was saying this was mischaracterized as a missing person, and that right out of the box, it should have been described as we've had a violent abduction here, and what they all point to is, and this is important, but what they all point to is we don't know, right? When the sheriff says, based on what we saw inside the house, we had a working theory of a motive, and he said, and it's basically the same now as it was on day one. So just so people are clear, I mean, there's so much we don't know. For instance, and I'm just going to go through, we don't was there a note left? Was there something written on a wall or a table, or from a very unconfirmed source? There's someone that I've communicated with that his brother works Pima County Sheriff's Department. He claims there was some derogatory message left inside the house, um, kind of mentioned Savannah, geared towards Savannah. I want to be very clear. I heard that in the very beginning. I've in no way been able to confirm that. I haven't heard anyone else that report that. So, but I think that's, and one of the reasons I like having people like Jamie and Morgan Wright on is because they walk through that. We're at a total disadvantage of because we don't know what they know, and we don't know what the FBI knows, and we don't know what the Pima County Sheriff investigators know. But the two things they come back to are they all seem to say it's just so highly uncommon. Oh, good. There's another. What do we have on YouTube? Thank you to Lorraine Lawrence. There we go. Our YouTube family, perking up. Um, they all seem to point to, and I think Morgan Wright did that very well when we spoke to him on Wednesday, on day 46, which was, why would you? It's high risk enough doing a burglary, but the removing and the abduction raises your risk level just completely through the roof. So, like, why would you do that? And I'll tell you, folks, it's interesting. Everyone is stuck on that. I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, have never fully understood that that's what makes this so unusual. Because, and I think part of that, though, if we truly play that out, is is because of potentially how this was first characterized by the sheriff, of that it was a missing person, that there was a missing person, she was located. That's not this. If you go in, and again, we don't know what inside looked like, but it sure seems as though that the inside of this home, the Nancy Guthrie home that you're looking at right now, that inside, number one, when the family went in, and then number two, when the police department came in, that it looks like it could have been a very violent scene inside. That, we do know that her blood was recovered right at you looking ahead on those steps. And so it certainly comes off as though that it shouldn't have been, we have a missing person. When you have Tommaso and Annie saying, we had her over for dinner, we dropped her off. Tommaso, the son in law, dropped her off. She went in through the garage door. The garage door went up, it closed. We've kind of gone over that these doors, especially the front door that you're looking at right now, they're very, very heavy. They also have like a security gate in front of the door, that a lot of the homes around here have. They don't. It is like a fortress, the front, so people use other doors to go in and out. Very, very common. But the fact that her friends called, texted her, "Hey, you okay? What's going on? You're missing mass. Supposed to be there." Always prompt her friend, told the New York Times. And then, as they call her, text her, no answer, no answer. Then they contact Annie. They come over here. We don't know everyone that came over, but they just say family came over, walked into the house. We don't know what they saw. That could have been very traumatizing what they saw. Call the sheriff, but Sheriff Nano's saying at the end of the day, what we saw certainly led us in a certain direction. And I think what stands out to me is they seem to be, as many people that are saying burglary gone wrong. I just noticed that a lot of the investigators seem to believe more that this was some kind of targeted abduction, that whatever their plan was, maybe some harebrained scheme, or someone was hired, but someone thought, we're going to abduct her, and then what we're going to try to do a ransom of some kind. But this is no longer. Well, we'll ask we'll ask actually Guy Adams of the Daily Mail what he thinks about that. And folks, joining us right now, and as I was saying earlier, and I said this to Guy the other day, and I consistently say it, but the Daily Mail, they're not sometimes first, they're just always first with info. That's how the Daily Mail is Guy Adams. Guy, first of all, thank you for taking the time.
Not a
And
problem.
I'd like to just start off. We are seeing the Daily Mail just put out that there's this retired sheriff from Pima County, I guess told Parade Magazine, and the Daily Mail has now, done a story that they believe this retired individual believes that there could have been 4 to 5 people involved with this abduction. I'm just curious, anything you want to add to that?
Well, thank you, John, and hello, everyone. I greet you from my hotel room here in Tucson. I've been here all week, and I've
Yep.
spent a lot of time looking into this story. I'm based in London usually, and I've just finished, and it's going in tomorrow's newspaper, a big kind of deep dive piece, and it'll be on our website as well, on the
Great.
whole on the Nancy Guthrie story, bringing readers up to date really with where we're at. And you've got to remember, a lot of our readers are British. They won't have been following the sort of blow by blow quite as closely as your viewers.
So,
Now, what I would say is, in that piece, and my editor asked me, please, could you, what's your best guess? What's happened here? Can you write in the article what you think the most likely explanation is? And without sort of spoiling the surprise too much, and you'll have to really wait to read my piece to get the kind of full thing. I do think there was certainly more than one person involved in this. And there could very well have been more than two. Like everything with this abduction, nothing quite adds up. And and whatever I say, therefore, needs to be taken with a very small pinch of salt. But if we think about it from a practical point of view, people are heavy. Moving people is difficult. Moving people against their will, even if they're an 84-year-old granny, is tricky. And I suspect, well, I know there will have been very few abductions are very rare, thankfully, anyway. But trying to abduct someone from their house on your own would be extremely difficult, I would say. I mean, even really, if you had a sort of gun pointed in their back, it would be. So my suspicion is that there was probably more than one person involved, and that quite possibly the chap we've seen on the doorstep camera, Mr. Balaclava Man, who was waiting outside the front door, he may have actually been waiting for his accomplice who probably entered the house not by the front door, probably by, let's say, a patio window or garage or something, to let him in. And we, given the bloodstain on the doorstep and everything, I think it's highly probable Nancy went out by the front door. So I mean, I think it's very unlikely there was just one person responsible here. What I would say, though, in which possibly counts against the argument that there was a huge gang, 4 or 5 people, is that one thing we do know is that this hasn't leaked. Like, the identity of whoever did this remains unknown.
That's right.
There is, in fact, a retired FBI agent I spoke to, and he was quoted in my article, which is going to be published overnight. He said to me, "There's quite rightly, there's an old mafia saying that 1 + 1 = 11." And what he means by that, and what that means, is that if you have more than one person who commits any sort of crime, there are more mouths, more people who can spread kind of rumors, spread gossip about that crime, and eventually, the likelihood of you being found out will increase. Now, if there's 4 or 5 people responsible, is it credible that 4 or 5 people, if 4 or 5 people were involved, and don't forget there's $1 million ransom out there. This story has been front page news for 7 weeks. Is it credible that nothing will have leaked? I don't know. 4 or 5 people with family members and all of that. I don't know, but 1 or 2 people, much more likely.
I agree with you, Guy. Ben Franklin, famous American, had the expression, 3 can keep a secret if 2 were in the cemetery. So I know with law enforcement, they've told me initially some were leaning towards the lone wolf idea, simply because, as you say, it's very difficult for people to keep a secret. It's more people, the more people you involve. Again, this was told to me by law enforcement. People break up in relationships. Now you have an ex-girlfriend. Now you have an ex-boyfriend. Someone at a job notices someone's acting differently. Some parent notices someone's acting differently. You just increase the likelihood that someone's going to come under scrutiny the more people you have like that. The Guy, you and I have been out at this house. Based on your article, how do you think, and I try to explain this to people, they didn't go crashing. We know they didn't crash through the front door, but as we've, all the media drones, no broken glass. To the left, you and I were chatting on the left side of the house. The right side is where the garage is, but on the other side, you have there's a little courtyard, and there's 2 sets of sliding glass doors. One leads to the bedroom. I believe the other one leads to like a living room, and then the back of the house. But would you agree with me at the very least? There was no signs of forced entry, and early on, the sheriff was very defensive, I think, when he was asked at a press conference about the possibility of forced entry.
Yeah, well, there was some briefings early on. I did a bit of kind of what we might call archaeology with this story. I looked back at what was written in the immediate aftermath and compared it to what was said at later dates. Now, there were some well-sourced reports, and by that I mean multiple reports, multiple outlets, multiple people who, proper outlets,
Yep.
but news networks, all saying there was some sign of forced entry.
Huh.
But I think you're right. I think in press conferences he slightly rode back on that and said, "Oh, I didn't say that." So, but I think, look, we know Nancy Guthrie lived in that house for a very long time. I think I'm right in saying it's the house where she raised her children.
Yes. 50 years. Yep.
50 years. So you can reasonably assume she felt secure there. She felt
Yes.
comfortable there. I haven't seen any reports that there'd ever been a kind of burglary or anything like that. She would have felt very secure in her house. She won't have felt, like she needed to turn it into Fort Knox. And obviously the neighborhood it's in, if you look at a map, obviously it looks like it's part of Tucson. But when you're in the neighborhood, I mean, you could really almost be in the countryside, because
Yes.
although there are lots of houses about, that there's lots of space. It's kind of quiet, secluded, feels very
Yes.
safe. Now, it might be 104 degrees today, and there is a heat wave in Tucson at the moment. But a month or 7 weeks ago, I don't think it was as hot as all that. So,
No.
it's possible that she slept with the sliding doors open just to keep herself cool. And I mean, quite possible. Or that she just didn't lock them because, it's her house. She feels secure, and someone could just go in them. Now, I think the other thing that's probable is that somewhere along the line, whoever did this had not just carried out reconnaissance, but had some sort of connection. Whether they had previously delivered a package or had done a job in the garden or something. So and maybe quite a long time ago, but someone may have noticed, maybe someone, I don't know, fixing some pipe work or might have just noticed, oh, look, there's an old woman in this house, and guess what? She keeps she keeps her sliding doors open, doesn't lock them properly,
and no dog, no alarm.
No.
And guys, I walk around, this area. I do a lot of walking with my black umbrella, but I can show you the homes that as I start to approach, I can hear the dog barking. And a neighbor mentioned to me, a lot of the newer people that have moved in recent years. Now, again, Nancy, a woman told me that this was like the 5th house in this development. So when they moved here, there was like no one around them. It's all kind of filled in around them. And folks, what people need to realize, what Guy is saying, I mean, if I lived in this area, this is where you'd want to live. It's very desirable. It's very exclusive. You're making a statement because you just go 4 minutes to North Campbell and there's all those beautiful art galleries and shops and restaurants and so forth. But what they mentioned is a lot of the newer people that have spent considerable amount of money that bought their home for 1 million, 1.5 million, but they do have security and they do have alarms, and because they're newer and it's a brand new house. But when you walk around here, to me, a house with no dog, no alarm, and an 84-year-old woman. And Guy, you and I know the way it's situated, how there's really no one directly across from her on either side. And then immediately across, you have to go up the hill. She's very secluded right here.
Yeah, but I think it feels like a safe neighborhood.
In this spot.
It feels safe to me,
yes,
the neighborhood.
Very much so.
I feel if I had kids, I'd feel comfortable letting them ride their bike around or whatever.
Yes.
And all the houses are they're private, but no one has big fences or anything like that.
No.
I mean, they're just sort of set back from each other, and so although her front door had a camera and I think had a cage, front door cage, and I don't think she made it easy for someone to sort of burgle the house, but
no,
I don't think it would have been particularly hard either. So anyway, that's my read.
What else can you, and folks, again, it's Guy Adams of the Daily Mail. He has a piece that's going to be published, I believe I could say the next 12 to 24 hours on the
Yeah,
website. I will
midnight,
share it on all of our
around
midnight.
midnight London time. So that'll be in
Okay.
about 5 or 6
What,
hours, I think.
I'm just curious, anything else? I don't want to spoil the story, but anything else you could share with us that you've been on the ground this week in back here and coming up with some things, or there's some things that maybe surprised you since you've been back this week?
Well, I think the one thing I would also stress, and the one thing that makes this quite an enticing story, I guess, is that every single theory about what might have happened, there is something that makes you think, but are we really sure about that?
Right.
So I think we're in a situation where, and I'm sure the police are in this situation as well, where we are not looking for the most, well, you're looking for the least unlikely course of events, not the most likely, if that makes sense.
It does.
And you have to look at all the different things that might have happened and just try and work out, okay, well, what are the reasons why she might have been? What are there reasons this wouldn't be a kidnapping? Well, kidnapping is extremely rare. Seems like a slightly odd target for a kidnapping. But then, was this a burglary? Well, I don't think so. Nothing was taken as far as we know. The guy turns up with a full rucksack. That's not what burglars do.
Right.
And burglars, if you surprise a burglar and you're a homeowner, they tend to just run. They don't tend to
yes,
make you disappear. It's not burglars don't do that. They want cash, or they want items of value, and then they want to leave. So and was it a crazed fan? Well, I don't know. A crazed fan, it's possible, but I think would a crazed fan go for Savannah Guthrie's mother? Would they be able to execute a crime that was, they haven't left much of a trace by the look of things. So, I'd toss all those factors around, and then the one area which I got into a bit in the article, and I will get into at greater length in the coming days on the Daily Mail's various sort of YouTube and podcast platforms once I'm back in the UK. I think there are a few areas where we might get breakthroughs. I think 3 areas really.
Wow.
Which, if I were the cops, I'd be kind of investing in. Area number 1 is straightforward one, really. That is one of the 40,000 odd tips that they've received. Is one of those more than a tip? Does one of those lead to the person responsible? Look, there's a chance, and they'll have to check them all out. They'll have had a lot of nutters phoning up their tip line. I don't doubt it. There'll be a lot of conspiracy theorists, if you're a phone operator, I guess your training will be at a very early stage. When someone calls, you'll be trying to find out, does this person want to share some theory they've dreamt up, or does this person have actual information? And if they have information, you should know pretty quickly. And so narrowing down those tips to sort of ones that are actually kind of credible should be a relatively easy process. So I think that they could get some progress there. Secondly, I'd say we know, because the sheriff has said, that there's some other video footage from around the house. I think they're trail cameras rather than security cameras, which I've got trail cameras at home. I use them sometimes for just spotting wildlife. It's kind of, you stick them in the stick him in a wood, stick him in a field, whatever. And I think that maybe Nancy seems to have had a sort of interest in some of the wildlife around the neighborhood. So, but anyway, they've said, I think, that they don't have footage from the night in question, but they have footage from sometime sort of leading up to the 31st of January. There could be something on. There could be someone on that who shouldn't be there. If that makes sense. There'll be all sorts of people you expect to see in your backyard. There'll be your kids, your grandkids, your gardener, your cleaner. But maybe there'll be someone there who just doesn't check out, and maybe that will lead them to the culprit. And the third, and perhaps, given other previous cases that have taken some time to solve. The third strand would be DNA.
Right.
Now I went to Phoenix on Tuesday. I went all the way to Phoenix, and I interviewed Professor April Stonehouse. So she works at ASU, but she was back in the day. She's a world-renowned expert on DNA evidence. Back in the day, she actually worked earlier in her career in the Pima County Forensics Department, and although she's not obviously worked on this case, her job she worked at the university teaching students who have an interest in potentially going into forensics, sort of how to analyze DNA. She sort of talked me through how the process of DNA analysis works, because I'm thinking, well, it's 7 weeks in, why haven't we got, if somebody was in the house, why don't we have their DNA? And it isn't as simple as, it's much trickier than you think, DNA analysis. I mean, obviously, we know there was blood just outside the house. We know that was Nancy's. Someone's blood, dead easy to test, dead easy to establish whose DNA it is. You take a sample of the blood, you whack it through your machine, you'll get a single DNA profile, assuming it's just one person's blood. You then take, I don't know, Nancy's toothbrush maybe, you get the DNA off that, and if they match, well, great, that's Nancy Guthrie's blood. It gets much harder if you're trying to get DNA that hasn't come from bodily fluids. So if you're trying to take, if someone's gone into a house, and this does happen in cases, and she's actually talked me through cases she'd worked on where a burglar had gone into a house, blown their nose, and left a tissue. That's brilliant. Very easy to get a DNA sample off the tissue. There's been cases where burglars have gone into someone's fridge, had a drink of the milk or something because they're thirsty.
Wow.
They got saliva on the thing. Easy, great. You can get a DNA sample off that. This guy was taking steps to not shed DNA. He was wearing gloves. He's wearing a balaclava. And we know that they have some items in from the scene that have what the sheriffs have described as a mixed DNA sample on them. And that could come and is likely to not have come from bodily fluids, but instead to have come from maybe skin cells. So, you shed skin cells all the time. That's why we have dust in houses. Everyone is shedding skin cells all the time. And they're microscopic and they're very hard to find. But if you take a swab from, let's say, I don't know, there's a pen sitting by Nancy's desk. You take a swab from that. And you take a swab from, I don't know, maybe there was her phone, and you take a swab from, they've done that, and they have got what they've said is a mixed DNA profile. And that becomes very, very complicated to unpick. It could have 3, 4, 5, 6 people's DNA in it. And the job of, first of all, separating those into 6 separate profiles is really tricky and technical, and just takes a lot of time. And then once you've separated it into, let's say that your mixed sample has 6 faint DNA profiles in it, well, you've then got to work out, okay, well, one of them belongs to Nancy Guthrie. Well, who do the other 5 belong to? And are these people whose DNA should be in this room? So you'd have to take the DNA profiles of her family members, of her cleaner, of if she had a cleaner, of whoever might have had a reason to be in that room. You take the profile. That again takes a long time. But if you can get one or two profiles that shouldn't be there, if you can identify them, you then actually once you get to that point, the process of then identifying a suspect is quite simple. Actually, we think it's hard. It's actually that part of the jigsaw is much quicker and simple. Yeah, because you know that they found a black glove on a verge a mile or 2 from the property a few weeks ago. Well, they established within quite quick or short order that glove belonged to a local restaurant worker, was nothing to do with this case.
That's right. Good point.
So, and they did that quickly. And the reason they were able to do that quickly is because they got a hell of a lot of people working on this case.
Yes.
So that to do that, there's two ways of identifying who DNA belongs to. The first is you check it against the CODIS database. That's pretty quick. So if someone's been arrested, convicted of a crime, they're somewhere on a state or a local or on the national database, there'll be a profile that you can match. Now, there's only about 25 million profiles on the US CODIS database, which sounds like a lot, but obviously there's probably 340 million Americans out there. So it's between 5 and 10% of people in the country have a DNA profile on the national database. However, if you don't get an exact match, you can search the national database, and you can also search a number of private databases, the ones that private DNA testing firms, ones people use to, adopted people use to trace their parents, or people use to get, 23andMe and those kind of things. So you can search all of them, and while you might not find an exact match, you might find someone with enough of a match for you to be able to go, well, that person is at least the first cousin of the person we're looking for, and then you draw a family tree and you find them. And in the Idaho murders, do you remember that case?
Yes. Yeah.
That's how they found Brian Kohlberger. So he left. I think I'm right in saying it was the sheath of a knife at the scene.
Yes. Yep.
They got some DNA off that. Couldn't match it to anyone.
And that's how they were able to trace him. Yes.
Yeah. They got a hit on a cousin with him. And
yes,
they, funnily enough, the family wouldn't then. What you then normally do is go to the family members and say, "Can we do a DNA test on you?" Actually, the Kohlberger family said no. So FBI agents just hid outside their house and went through the bins, and they ended up getting a Q-tip. Yep. And on that Q-tip, which Mr. Kohlberger had stuck in his ear, they got an exact match. So that's how they got him. So
that is amazing.
If and when investigators can get an alien DNA sample, a new alien DNA sample, and properly map it, within a few days, they ought to be able to find who that belongs to. And I think that's probably the best chance of a significant breakthrough. But the professor I spoke to said, Professor Stonehouse said, in her experience, that it's really difficult, and you're dealing with tiny fragments of DNA, and it'll just take a while. And she said, actually, the amount of time, I said, well, 7 weeks, quite a long time. She said, look, could be longer. So I think that's probably the best chance of those are the three ways we might get a breakthrough. And she had faith that if they invest enough time and enough energy in the DNA analysis, they will get there in the end. But it takes time. And that time, maybe weeks. So you might have to, your umbrella may be getting
a longer workout.
Yeah.
Folks, again, we're speaking with Guy Adams of the Daily Mail. And Guy, just so people understand, I believe the New York Times had a story, and they interviewed some of Nancy's friends who were they were here at the house that Friday, and they played a game of Mahjong, and then they made plans to see her Sunday at service. I think she even said, "Oh, I'm not sure." She may have mentioned, "I'm having dinner at my daughter's tomorrow night." Maybe not. But just so people understand, whoever the women that came over on Friday that played Mahjong, as an example, it would make sense if their DNA was in the house because they were friends and welcome guests of Nancy.
Yes, although we don't know, of course, what room the evidence has come from.
Good point.
Your friend comes around for dinner. Well, they're likely to have been in the dining room, the sitting room, maybe gone to the bathroom. If the evidence comes from Nancy's bedroom, that narrows it. Funnily enough, Professor Stonehouse said it's actually quite a good thing that she lives alone in terms of finding DNA, because if someone lives, you've got kids and dogs, and your kids have friends doing stuff for sleep out. A family home with families in it, you'll have all sorts of DNA all over the bloody place, and But someone who lives alone, that it tends to be a bit simpler. So yeah, that it'll. But you're right. They'll have to. I can't remember the names of the friends. The New York Times piece. It's a very good piece, actually. Named them.
It was.
Spoke a little bit about because there was some confusion at the start, wasn't there, about Nancy not turning up to church and
correct.
What was her church? And actually, it was said it was her church locally. I think had been the local Presbyterian church. Which is funny. I went to their service on Sunday. It's a nice church.
Wow.
But in fact, according to the New York Times article, they were live streaming a service in Manhattan that Savannah
correct.
goes to.
Yes.
Of a church that Savannah goes to. Which is I haven't quite done the maths on the timings, which seem a bit out to me, in that unless it was an afternoon service in Manhattan and Nancy didn't turn up in the morning but anyway, who knows? I mean, maybe it was a recording of maybe they just.
I believe it was a recording.
Yeah.
I believe it was a recording of the earlier morning service that Savannah had gone, and then they'd watch it. Her friend did mention that Nancy was always prompt. She was then driving herself over there. So I know some people have asked about, why did she get the Uber and be driven home? It's one thing to drive at night, but I noticed being around here, we do see a lot of elderly, certainly driving during the day. But just, that says a lot.
Let's not discount the possibility she wanted a few glasses of wine on a Saturday night.
Yes, that's a good point. Good point.
I mean, I don't know if she's a boozer or not. But yeah, so I think she had a car, Nancy, obviously, and I think you couldn't really live there without a car very easily.
No,
unless you'd have to be, you'd hardly see anyone. I think she had a car. She would drive to the shops, which aren't very far away. There's a CVS up the road and a Starbucks and a supermarket. I can't remember which. Maybe it's a Whole Foods. Anyway, within sort of 5 or 10 minutes, I'm sure in broad daylight she'd be happy driving. I think once it gets dark, your visibility is a bit off. A lot of old people don't like driving after dark. But she drove. So she would have drone. She was in the habit, and I don't know if this was every week, but I think it was a regular thing. She'd drive around to her friend's house. They drink. I gather grape juice. They do a sort of at home communion with grape juice and some biscuits or some wafers. When she didn't turn up, I can't remember the exact timings, but the friend phoned a relative, which must be Annie, Nancy's daughter.
Yes.
I thought. Yeah. And the relative because the relative was able to get to Nancy's house at somewhere at, I think 11:50 a.m. And the first 911 call to the cops was shortly after noon. So they pretty quick. Something in that house they must have looked at and gone. Not only I'm concerned my mother's not here, but that there's cause for concern here. It's not just no one in the house. There was no one in the house. Her wallet, keys, phone are still here. She's not here, and maybe there was some sort of scene of some sort of, I don't know if struggle's the right word, but something had happened. Something wasn't right, and the sheriff said the same thing. Right? He said the moment he and his team went round, they quickly concluded that this was a crime scene essentially, and it became a kind of it became a sort of law enforcement case very quickly after that. So anyhow, on that bombshell, John, I quite shortly have to get in my car and drive to the airport and go back to the motherland.
Okay, before your article comes out, I'm just curious. The sheriff, just your thought. The sheriff, so just as you said, pick up right there. It's February 1st, Sunday. They go in. Now, we don't know what the family saw, but the family, they didn't go out looking for it. They immediately called 911. So I'm just curious what the Daily Mail has reported of what the police found inside. And the reason I asked that guy is because in the Today Show interview, the sheriff said that afternoon, he and his investigative team, they basically developed a theory on motive, and now 40 something days later it still holds up. So my
Yes.
question is, what do you what would be your takeaway of
Well,
what they saw?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, his theory could be something very broad, or it could be something very, narrow. Like,
Okay.
I suspect it's something quite broad. I don't think he immediately thought, it's the pool boy and they've done it. I think he might, when he says that he developed a theory, I think based on what we know was in the house, which was her personal belongings, the sort of stuff you wouldn't leave the house with.
Okay.
Based on the fact that, you've gone around the garden, you shouted a bit. I'm assuming her whoever the relative was, looked around the property, no sign of her. Based on the fact there's no sign of her, the stuff, if she had sort of walked off, the stuff she would have taken with her is not there. And there's some sort of, and the police haven't ever provided any real insight into what the scene was like in the house. They've kept their cards. One of the few things the investigation has managed to keep quiet, and I think that reflects well on the investigation. They've made lots of other things public at odd times. One of the few things we still don't know, and it's probably something they need to carry on keeping to themselves, is what they saw in the house. But I would suspect there's blood on the doorstep. Maybe there's some sort of evidence of a struggle of some sort,
right?
And they would have instantly come up with taken the view that this was I suspect that this was an abduction, and I'm sure that's still his view. If that's I suspect that's what joining the dots. That's what he means. So I think what he's trying to say there is he initially thought it was an abduction. He still thinks it's an abduction.
Okay.
He doesn't think we're going to suddenly find some sort of alternative explanation. But I don't think he has. I don't think he's narrowing in on arresting the offender based on what he said last week. But I think I think it probably is the least unlikely explanation, and he's probably has he found any proper evidence that contradicts the thesis that it's an abduction in the last 7 weeks? I don't think he would have. I can't think of any evidence that directly contradicts it being an abduction. No. I mean, you have to. That's not to say, by the way, that the ransom notes, which are genuine, they may be fake. Some of them certainly are. I think probably they all, who knows? But it may be that there is a genuine ransom note out there, or they just don't know. But I think that's kind of his. I think that would be his working thesis. I'm slightly surprised that the detectives haven't. I mean, I'd like to know really how thorough their search of the house has been.
Yes.
How much material has been bagged up, taken away, and is being looked at on the DNA front. And that would be worth knowing. But because I when was the last time a policeman went in the house? Quite a long time ago. So
quite a long time ago.
They concluded that search. But yeah, that's my best bet.
That's a lot. Folks, again, it's Guy Adams of the Daily Mail. By the way, his story is going to be posted in just about 9 hours.
Yeah, so what?
6 hours ahead, 3 hours behind there. Guy, final question for you. Yeah. How is it, because I said this to you, I've been saying it for a long time. I have a sibling that's watching, right? How is it that the Daily Mail is always first on these stories? Who is it that drives, you've been there a long time, but who is it that drives the train on that? You mentioned to me something like your boss was like, I need you to go over there and solve that crime. There's an expectation that the Daily Mail is in fact going to break the story and is going to get there first. But where does that come from inside the newsroom?
Well, look, we're a big news organization. We are the biggest, or certainly on circulation-wise, the biggest newspaper in the United Kingdom. We have for some time been the most read newspaper website in the world. So we have proper resources, and in the I guess in the sort of in the journalism is, it's in some ways very simple. You just, much like a detective, but without any sort of statutory powers, you just sort of follow as many leads as you can, knock on whatever doors are appropriate, visit whatever sites are appropriate, speak to as many experts as possible, and try and kind of become, in short order, an expert on whatever subject you're writing about. So journalism is quite simple, but it is expensive. And doing what we do, doing it properly. There's a difference between someone sitting in a room, searching the internet for kind of, or searching social media for sort of rumors and cobbling together a news report from that, and someone actually going from London to Tucson, spending a bit of time, and breathing in the desert air, and trying to kind of just cover off every single bit of that story, work out what's important, what isn't, and come. So that process is just an expensive process, and it's something the Mail has the resources to invest in. And you see a lot of, especially in I'm sure this is our industry is has its struggles. The print media has, from a sort of financial point of view, its model has been disrupted by the internet, by social media, by alternative news media, and that has meant the resources that news organizations once had have become a little bit constrained, and it means not a lot of newspapers can employ what I'd call grown-ups, frankly. I'm very lucky that I've been allowed. I'm employed by a company that can keep me in the style to which I'm accustomed, and then keep my family's bellies full and my children clothed and all the rest of it. And it's actually increasingly rare in journalism to have proper news organizations with proper resources who can employ kind of journalists who've been around a bit. And I've been a journalist for nearly 25 years, and I've been a foreign correspondent for 4 or 5 years. I've been based in LA. I was based in LA for the Independent newspaper from about 2008 to 2012. So I've got a certain amount of experience, and it just sort of helps, I think, sometimes. So, and we have we just have really good people. And when we go for a story, I don't think anyone can sort of, actually, that's an arrogant thing to say. When we really go for a story,
hold on, I'll say it. They can't. When the Mail floods the zone, there is no one better. Always right and always first. And then, as much as sometimes there's denials, it all ends up washing out. We're going to let them head to the airport. Go ahead.
No news organization's always right.
But, for the most part, most of the time.
We do our best, and I say we're definitely more right than we are wrong. And anyway, look, if people want to read my piece,
yes,
I guess what's the most sensible thing to do? Probably, so you see my name at Guy Adams, just follow me on X or whatever, and I will, as soon as it goes up, I will post a link to it on my Twitter feed, and you can settle in. And like I say, bear in mind it's a very long article. It's nearly 2,500, 3,000 words, and it's aimed at people who maybe it's aimed at people who might not have been following every day's live stream, but who kind of have an interest in the story and just need sort of bringing up to date with everything. So whether I'll be telling your viewers anything they don't already know, who knows? But I'd like to think I can. There'll be a little something in there that tickles people's fancy. Anyway, on that note,
excellent.
John, been a pleasure.
Guy, thank you very much. Guy Adams of the Daily Mail. Guy, great. Thank you for the time. Very generous, and safe travels back to the UK. All right, folks, there it is. Guy Adams right here. Boy, he is terrific, very knowledgeable. I want to welcome everybody in once again on this day 48. And just, I know some people don't pick up on it, but they are always the Daily Mail. They he's very, very modest about it. But boy, when they flood the zone, they get a story. Now, I am aware that the TSA thing is a major problem. Again, we are live right now on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We're live on X, and we're also live on the radio at AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. And I will be sharing that article probably later today because it'll be posted at midnight. But make no mistake about it, the Daily Mail, they're very modest. Some of his reporting going back on Prince Andrew and the royal family and the Epstein files and everything. Again, they're very, very modest, but it was really, really remarkable reporting. Now, I am aware that there is some other news. And one of the things that people were sick this winter, by the way, it's the first day of spring, and I can't think of anyone to celebrate and bring it in better than the Queen of Health. And it's our friend Marie at It's My Health. Marie, so good to see your smiling face and happy first day of spring.
Happy spring. Oh my gosh. Hopefully we are totally done with this winter.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough winter.
Yeah,
So,
it's been, I guess,
no,
what
folks,
you would consider normal, but we've been spoiled.
very much so. Marie, you take it away, folks. Everything to keep you healthy. If you're listening right now, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. She is the Queen of Health. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Marie, what do you have for us on this first day of spring?
Well, as we come into spring and people start heading outside to start cleaning up, the aches and pains are going to come. So thought, I could mention that we do have arnica, which is one of the best things. We have it in a cream form, but we also have it that you take it as a tablet, and it can really help when you overexert out in the yard a little too much. We have things for allergies because those are going to hit us really fast as spring really starts to come in. I've seen some trees that you can see are kind of getting ready, wanting to explode with their flowers and their leaves. So that will cause, pollen problems for some people. We do have homeopathic remedies and we have herbal formulas that are really good for allergies. We have some teas as well that can be really helpful. Anybody who's watching can see behind me, I have a whole bunch of teas. We have hundreds of different herbs and spices and teas, and then we have boxed ones as well. And we have local honey, which can be really helpful as we come into allergy season as well. So we're prepared here for the spring onslaught of pain and allergies. So, come and see us if you need something.
Now, Marie, Saturdays are always big at It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Spring, people have been, locked away a little bit for winter. What's happening at It's My Health for Super Saturday?
So I'll be here from 9 to 4. And then we also have Pilates class. We have reflexology that's going on tomorrow. We'll often have massage as well. So different practitioners are here, and different classes. So it's always active here, and always a lot of people coming through.
What if someone has had a certain tea they were enjoying during the winter, but now they want to change it up for spring?
Yeah, more of like the fruity and the green teas, for the spring for sure, and less of the heavier, spicier type teas that we'll drink more in the winter to be more warming. So we're starting to lighten it up with some of the fruits and things. And we also have things to make smoothies. So people who want to, instead of having a tea, or they can make a tea and make that part of a smoothie. So many things that we can help people put together for spring.
You are the Queen of Health. Keep the great work. At some point, I will see you again. But be well, and always good to see you, Marie. Thank you very
Nice.
much.
Thank you, John. Have a good one.
All right, folks, there it is. Marie at It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Now we continue. You want to look for that Daily Mail piece by Guy Adams. Do a little work on him. I'll tell you, and the Daily Mail, when they flood the zone, they have no peers. They are very, very aggressive with stories. I know he said no newspapers write all the time, but so many times if the Daily Mail goes with it and they have it, it's very rare that then it does not pan out in that way. So I do want to go through some of the news. I also want to mention, with the high price of oil right now, remember Propane Plus. Stop it and see the Johnson family. For those that are watching, it is still the front of the home of Nancy Guthrie. I've just moved into the shade a little bit simply because of as it starts to heat up out here, and it is an extremely well, it's a heat advisory type weather, as it's not even 11 o'clock yet. It's 85, and the temperature next hour is going to be 92, and then it should peak later this afternoon around 101 degrees. So very, very, very different. Let me just actually check the weather. Tomorrow, okay, tomorrow cools off 99, Sunday 96, and then Monday 93, and then oh wow, a week from next Saturday it's going to be 89 and then 82. But definitely some hot weather. But folks, Propane Plus, with all the high price of heating oil, you don't have to worry about that. If you have propane, call the Johnson family. Propane Plus, always online at propaneplus.com. 24/7, you can depend on Propane Plus. Now, we were talking about security. And I tell people, as we stand here in front of the home of Nancy Guthrie, and what you're looking at is the circular driveway where they believe they brought the vehicle up and then they exited that way. I see in this neighborhood now the ground is very, very hard. So I don't see, and Guy Adams of the Daily Mail was right. I don't see a tremendous number of fences per se, but I do see people that have gates at their driveways. And when you think about it, and again, I'm not trying to second guess the setup they had here at the Guthrie residence, but I see more people that, okay, someone could walk onto the property, but if you had a gate that can open and close at your driveway entrance, at least then they wouldn't have been able to drive up to the door. But I do see people that have that. And there are also people in this area that have very long driveways. But why not call Mike Rizzo at Capitol Fence? 401 618 4407. 401 618 4407 for Capitol Fence. The original, the best. You can always find them online at capitalfenceri.com. Fence or gate, most trusted for privacy and security, serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. It's Capital Fence. Free estimate, and they're licensed and insured. Why not get at least a gate at the end of your driveway so no one is pulling up into your driveway potentially to do harm or maybe even rob your home? They also do repair and maintenance. Maybe you have an older fence. Capital Fence. Call today, free estimate 401 618 4407 for Capital Fence. So on this day 48, and I am aware with all the March Madness going on, and I am seeing the news. Obviously, right now, if there's anyone traveling, and I'm sure glad that I am not traveling today because these TSA lines seem like they're a total nightmare. But I think I want to just go through and make sure I'm not missing any new news of the day, so to speak, regarding uh, the Nancy Guthrie investigation. This whole area, the matchup between number 1 Arizona and the number 16 Long Island Sharks have begun. Okay, so that's obviously going to dominate this with what's going on in this area as far as that. But I do want to talk about how you're hearing a reoccurring theme for those that have been following the case. And what I notice is what you don't have is some of these theories. As someone that's been covering the case and doing live streams and live chats and so forth. And again, thank you to everybody on YouTube where we do super stickers and super chats. Thank you to everybody on Facebook that sends stars. If you're on Facebook, make sure you follow the page. You can always share the page. Same thing on YouTube. We're going to see how the weekend breaks out with some of the coverage. I have found that you start to burn a little bit if you go 7 days. But what I wanted to mention was, I hear people that talk about they think it was like a real estate gone bad with someone wanted to buy uh, what you're looking at, the home of Nancy Guthrie, and she wouldn't sell. That is there would be evidence of that, and there would be a communication of that, and there would be like a path of travel, so to speak, on that, where they would have, remember, they have her phone, so they have everyone that she was communicating with. What I noticed that ever just seems to be emerging is the notion that this was a very violent but forced abduction. And the big news today that everyone seems to be going with is there's just growing speculation that there was more than one person involved, possibly several people involved. I do kind of agree with Guy Adams that the more people that you include, the more that it can spiral. But it still comes back to, just so we're all clear, these people, I think it was someone wanted to do an Airbnb, she wouldn't sell. And then there's no evidence of that in any way. And anyone that says that, by the way, I defy you to name a case where that actually happened. I don't think you're going to find a case where that happened. I am unfamiliar with, a situation where people like do something like that. If anything, you're not going to sell us the house, so we're going to abduct you and remove you. If anything, then that would delay a home hitting the market, or certainly point the finger in the direction of anyone that would then try to obtain it. So I'll just go back to, I haven't seen or heard any evidence, but if the idea that there's a retired Pima County investigator saying that thinks it was as many as 4 to 5 people. That sounds like a lot of people to me. Where, I mean, I could see the argument definitely 2, but they have not said anything by that. They haven't, meaning the sheriff, he hasn't commented in any way saying, at this point, we're convinced that it was, this or that. There's been nothing. They haven't said anything like that. If anything, they've been pretty quiet, open investigation. But I think what Guy was mentioning makes more sense to me, that I don't think people realize the difficulty of trying to move someone, and let alone, Nancy Guthrie, 5'4", 150 pounds, maybe strike. I mean, that is not an easy person to move. That's not like in a movie where they point a weapon at them and say move, and then the person just starts, slowly walking to the vehicle. But that seems to be growing speculation about if there was more than one person. I also come down with on the side of the investigators that say, if some people want to go to straight conspiracy, but for the sheriff to say, based on what we saw, we started to develop this was a violent abduction, and if no money changed hands, and there was no ransom paid or anything like that, and I agree with Guy from the Daily Mail that I'm not convinced that it was ever legit anyway. That I don't, we don't know what this was. If anything, maybe the idea of either a botched kidnapping or that someone had it out for Nancy and or her family, who I just, that's what still seems unknown. is the motive, even though the sheriff has said they have a good handle on it. Folks, I also want to remind you about ServPro of Providence. Remember, call them if there's a fire. They're fast, thorough, they're professional. If you have a fire or flood or mold, ServPro of Providence, 401 941 5500. 401 941 5500. It's ServPro of Providence. So it is day 48 and the investigation continues. I am aware that with some people, I mean, anyone that would be traveling, your main focal point is going to be what's going on at the airports right now with the incredible, something's got to be done about this with these TSA lines. I mean, that is, I can't even imagine people getting in line at 3 a.m. this morning and then missing a 6 o'clock flight. That is the type of thing. I think it's a voting issue. I think people would vote on that. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's any other headlines, anything of substance. It's going to be a tough day at CBS. And other than that, I mean, the big news in this area is actually going to be with the Arizona State basketball team and all of the March Madness, which I actually, again, it is the first day of spring. I think it's kind of welcome. But as we sit here, and I have in the past, again, we are live. Thank you for all the super stickers and super chats on YouTube. It is day 48. I am hearing from various people that certainly seem to have experience with this in this field, that to them it just seems as though this was a very targeted, violent abduction that took place. And for those that are watching, so there's the front door. You can see it is a real fortress, so to speak. It is a security door right in front. I meant to mention a guy at the Daily Mail that there is drone footage on that first day from a local TV station, and they show detectives right there in that courtyard outside of, and there's sliding glass doors there, the master bedroom, and also that goes into the living room. So we don't know. It is still unknown of exactly how they entered. And I was glad to talk to a guy from the Daily Mail because early on, there was a press conference where someone mentioned forced entry, and then the sheriff snapped at them, so to speak, and said, I never said forced entry. So, you know what else is, they have video of people in the back and people around the pool area. So, you know, there's so much information that has not been let out, such as, is it possible that Nancy was having some friends over? And Guy's right about, we don't know what room of the house that they were in. Guy Adams from the Daily Mail. And we do know that she has a mahjong table, which is a game that you play. And so they certainly were gathered around that. But we don't know what are the rooms, and we don't know where the DNA was found. I thought that was very interesting, and I'm anxious to read his piece in the Daily Mail about the DNA. So we'll just take a walk down. Again, for those that have been following the case, there are, for whatever reason, someone was saying that they all the signs were removed. The signs are all still here. They just kind of put into a pile a little bit. I think it looks better. And while we were just moments ago, a mother and daughter came and left flowers here. Again, the real flowers that were being put that have died have been cleaned up because of all the problems with animals and those are the javelinas. All the cards and notes that people wrote were put into the family mailbox. And yeah, the mother and daughter that were just here, they just put some nice little flowers down. I'm not sure which ones. Those are the reason why some of these are still holding up is because they're artificial. And then you even still have, the sign, and then there's more religious type things. There's nice lights up here at night. I have been here in the very early morning hours, and because of these lights, it does light up a little bit. It does look nice at night. So, and this sign now to Nancy's kidnappers, it does seem like now. I mean, I remember when that was placed out, and it seemed as though that was the feeling of, still not too late to do the right thing. I just don't get the feeling that a lot of people um, are taking a lot of stock. The kidnapping angle definitely blew everything wide open, but where we sit on this day 48, and it's going to be a hot one. I want to just go back into the front. Is it sure seems to point into the direction that we don't know the motive of why, but this was a very violent abduction. That someone came in the middle of the night on that January 31st into February 1st and went into that home that you're looking at and took her out in a very violent fashion. And it sure seems to stem from that there was some kind of violent altercation between Nancy Guthrie and then whoever came into her home. And that's where we sit. That's where things stand. So listen, everybody, we remain on the ground. I'm going to sign off for now. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you follow on YouTube. Make sure you follow on Facebook. We're going to see where this goes. Right now with the TSA lines, I couldn't leave this area even if I wanted to. Thank you for all the super stickers. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the stars. So, but it's going to be another heat advisory day here in the Catalina foothills. Again, the search goes on, answers with what happened to Nancy Guthrie. It does seem to point more to, we don't know the why, but a violent abduction that happened here that seems like it was terrifying. So if anything big breaks, we will be back. But for now, we're going to sign off on this day 48 on this Friday.